You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. Welcome back, everybody, to the Hammock Hangers Podcast. I am your host, Paul Collins, or Skunkape. This week's episode is going to be a little different from the normal. Instead of me being the one that interviews a guest, AJ Glenn, or y'all know him as Pheonix, is going to be the one playing the part of host and interviewing me. We talk about my 2012 Appalachian Trail thru-hike and how I used my Clark North American Hammock the whole way. So let's go ahead and get on with the show so I can hand the mic over to Pheonix and let him have the show for the day. Hi, what is up, everybody? We're back again this week, and yet again I have Pheonix with me, but this week is going to be a little different. Instead of me interviewing him, he wants to flip it and him interview me. So welcome back again, AJ.
Hey guys, how's everything going?
All right, so I am going to give it to you, and this week it's going to be your podcast with me, I guess.
Okay, Paul, look at me. I am the captain now.
Oh, hey, look, I do all my own editing too, so I'm good.
All right, so we have a lot of interest on our podcast, and a lot of the suggestions have been talking about interviewing people that have done a long trail, like the AT or the PCT or the CDT, one of the big, long, massive trails, but have done it in a hammock. And yeah, we could go out and we could find some people to interview, and I'm sure we could, because we have a few good friends of ours that have done it. Two Speed, who runs Two Speed hammocks. He actually just got off the trail not too long ago. I want to say the PCT, but I know that he has done the AT as well. But we have you, Paul. We have you, Skunkape. You actually have done the entire AT thru-hike in a hammock. So, Paul, welcome to the Hammock Hangers Podcast.
Appreciate it, Pheonix.
It's great to have you. Here. It is great to have you. All right, so just give us kind of an intro about when you did your hike and about how long it took you, and just some basic numbers for us.
Okay, so I started my hike. I did the hike. Let me rephrase that. Back in 2012. I started on March 1st. I summit Katahdin and I started at Amicalola Falls. So I'd done the approach trail as well.
Okay.
That was on March 1st. I summit Katahdin on August 27th. So it took me 3 days shy of 6 months to do.
Now, was that like an average time, or is it a fast time?
It's not a fast time, no. It generally takes roughly 5 to 6 months to do. On average, some people do, go a lot faster and get done in, 4 months or whatever. But I was somewhat taking my time, but at the same time, I had always heard that they shut Katahdin down on October 15th, I think it is. Which I just recently found out that is a myth, that they don't really have a set date that they shut Katahdin down. But like I said, at that time, I didn't really know that. So I was trying to make sure that I finished before, October. But so, yeah, I mean, when I was doing my planning, gathering gear and all that stuff, I had done a lot of camping, here around my hometown and everything. But I'd never done any hiking. So, I was going online and doing a lot of research and everything else. And I didn't even know about camping hammocks back then. The only hammocks that I knew about were those backyard, hammocks that can't nobody hang in unless you're some circus freak or whatever.
Right.
So I was online looking for just a little one-man bivvy style tent or something, something small just for me, and ended up coming across the Clark hammocks. So I started researching them, and amongst finding those hammocks and all that, I was like, well, okay, so I started looking up hammocks, and that's when I found hammock forums and all that, and got into that and started asking questions on there, and learned a lot from Shug, of course.
Who hasn't?
Right? Because everybody pointed me to his videos, and then I also sent him some messages, and he messaged me back personally. So my first hammock that I did end up getting a Clark hammock. I got the North American, which Dutch does not make that one anymore right now anyhow. I don't know if he ever will, put that one back into production or not, since he bought out Clark. But anyhow, so I got that, and then didn't like the ropes, so of course Dutch was my next stop. So Dutch has been taking my money since 2012.
The struggle is real.
Yes, it is. That man has more money of mine than anybody else. But so so I started my hike, and I hammocked the whole way.
So from the sorry to interrupt you, but the time that you first laid hands on your hammock till you got to the trail, about what timeline are we looking at?
Oh God, maybe a month.
Okay, so you didn't have before attempting your thru hike. You did not have any major long distance trail hiking, just like car camping.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
And just, me and my friends, going off, into the just random, like Ocala Forest or whatever, But so, yeah, no, I didn't have any backpacking, real backpacking experience. And I didn't have any hammocking experience either.
So with no real experience in anything like that, why?
Well, whenever I would, my friends and I would go out camping, we were always in tents. Mm-hmm. And the hammock just looked really comfortable to me. And, being off the ground and everything else, it just kind of intrigued me. So that's why I ended up going with the hammock, and I'm glad I did, because I have not gone back since.
Okay. So we talked about your hammock and things like that, but of course, as you and our viewers know, that's just one piece of the setup. So what did you do as far as like a rain protection, like a tarp?
Well, the North American came with a tarp.
Okay. So would the North American be kind of like a Hennessy package kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Because you had your hammock, and then the way that the North American was originally designed, you had your ropes that came off the ends for your suspension, and there was they had a piece of bungee on it with a couple of clips, and one end of that bungee would clip to the top of the bug net of the hammock, and the other end clipped to the tarp. So, when you would package it up, it all packaged up together. And then when you deployed it, it would all deploy together. But now I did end up changing that out because the tarp that came with it was a smaller tarp. Mm-hmm. So I did end up buying a larger tarp with doors, and had to kind of re-rig how the netting stayed up, which was no big deal. All I done was had 2 more tie outs that once I put the suspension up, I would just take them up to the Dutch buckles.
So what tarp did you replace the Clark tarp with?
Oh God, I'm trying to remember now. Honestly, I can't even remember what brand it was. I do know that it was a seal poly with doors that I ended up getting at one of the outfitters in Franklin, I do believe. I think I got it whenever I passed through Franklin.
Okay, and tell us about your installation. You had a very interesting installation setup.
I did. Of course, the Clarks, they have the pockets underneath, which drastically help anyhow, even if you don't have any sort of insulation or anything. But like I said, earlier, I was new to hammocks, so I didn't know a lot about the quilts and all that stuff. So I saw the pockets, and back then the Z-liner for the Clarks was not what it is now, how it's one whole piece that fits, on the outside. It was actually 6 separate ones that went into the pockets. But I didn't have the funds to get the Z-liner or anything like that. So I kind of done my first DIY and had an old down quilt that was for my bed that I kind of ripped apart and sucked out all the down and made 6 separate pillows to go into those pockets. And it actually worked.
That sounds like a lot of feathers.
Yeah,
it was like a lot of feathers.
There was a lot of mess.
And so did you use that particular installation system through your entire hike?
I ended up sending it back, getting rid of it once I got past a little ways past the Smokies. 2012 was a very mild year for cold anyhow. So, once I got past the Smokies and it started, warming up a little bit, I sent those pillows back home. I sent my sleeping bag back home because I had a sleeping bag and not a quilt, not a top quilt. And ended up just getting like a fleece type liner, deal to use the rest of the trip.
Gotcha. Now, I also know that you are planning a rehike of the AT in the next sooner rather than later, and then at least in the next couple of years.
I'm hoping. I was wanting to this year, but things did not pan out for me to do that.
Well, with all the, because I'm sure, as you know as well as I, the hammock camping world has just exploded as far as innovations and changes in gear. So your second time around, what type of gear changes are you going to make to your rig?
Well, of course I will go lighter. I've changed, my pack itself, since I've finished the trail, went with a lot of the Dyneema and stuff like that. So, of course my tarp will be one of the Dyneema tarps with doors, probably my hammock gear, Winter Palace, and not sure what hammock I would take. I mean, of course, I've got several now. Not quite as many as you, but
we're not talking my numbers, Paul.
I've I've always said that, I'd love to be able to take my cloud hammock, but I don't know. I'd be kind of scared to try and take a cloud hammock 2,000
you
miles.
are a braver man than I.
If I'd done that, I'd have to make sure that somebody was on speed dial with another hammock ready to overnight me.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not sure what hammock I'd end up taking. I do know it would be a lighter one than the Clark, though.
Right. Yeah, the Clark is definitely not known for being an ultralight setup.
No, it's it's funny. It's not an ultralight, but it wasn't that bad to really carry. And I mean, I kind of liked it because if there were some nights that if I knew it was gonna storm one night or whatever, and I didn't feel like either setting up in the rain or if I knew it was gonna still be raining whenever I woke up in the morning, I didn't want to pack up wet. So, I'd stay in one of the shelters, and the Clark makes a really good pillow when it's packed up in its own little stuff sack.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So I know a lot of people, they worry about taking a hammock out on a long distance trail like the AT because they're worried, oh, well, what if I don't have trees? Or like, for example, during the Smokies, you're not technically supposed to hang or camp outside of the shelters. So how did you cross those?
How did I get around that?
Yeah.
Well, the trick to getting around that in the Smokies is just get there late. If you get to the shelters late and the shelters are full, well, you can't sleep in the shelter. And then you're good to set up outside, which I mean that's their rules as well. It's not like I was doing anything, illegal or anything like that. It was just if you don't want to sleep in a shelter, you get there late.
Okay. Are there any places on the trail where you couldn't use a hammock just because there were no trees?
Well, I mean, once you're going through the whites, you're above tree line. So, obviously you can't, set up right up on top of, say Mount Washington or somewhere like that, or, any of the presidentials. You'd either have to go, down a little bit to get back in the tree line, or, I mean, there were several times that, there would be like a fire tower, and I would string up under the fire tower using the legs of the fire tower to hang from.
Okay. Did you ever get to use your hammock like when you had a town day or stay in a hostel that you would just rather maybe get a discount on a room there?
No. Usually whenever I went into town, if I stayed in a hostel, I would just sleep in the bed that that was provided and all that stuff. I mean, it was, don't get me wrong, it was nice to sleep in a bed every once in a while, and not have to set up. That was the main thing, is, not setting up.
So, we talked about, you started in March and you ended in
August.
Okay.
The end of August.
You probably saw a pretty drastic different change of temperature starting from March in, North Georgia. And, hiking through most of the summer, most of your nights were probably mild. For someone that is maybe looking at doing either the AT or maybe some other long distance hike, what type of quilt range would you suggest they look at?
Well, I mean, each year I do keep up with, the new group of hikers that are hiking the Appalachian Trail. Mainly just I guess torture myself because I get depressed every year whenever I see them out there, not me. But these past couple of years they've had cold winters. So I mean, usually my go-to, I'm a hot sleeper anyhow. So usually my go-to set is a 20 under, and if it's going to be cold, a 20 top. But then, once it warms up and stuff like that, you could probably easily, go with like a 40-40.
And that's something that you could, pick up on the trail, have someone mail you to pick up at a...
Yeah, usually something like that. You would have it already packaged up and have somebody back at your house, on the ready to send it to you whenever you need it.
Gotcha.
And all you got to do is, you look at your guidebook, see where you're at, see where you're going to be at in about a week, and either find, a hostel that, allows mail drops, or you find the post office and you have them mail it to one of those places and just put the correct information on there, hold for thru-hiker, so-and-so. You put their real name, their trail name, and the rough date that they're going to be there, and they'll always hold it.
Gotcha. With going back to talking about installation, with the AT known for being kind of a wet hike for most of it, and using down, would you ever consider using some of the synthetic materials versus down, or are you pretty happy with the technology and the down coatings that they have on the market right now?
Well, I'm pretty happy with the down. I mean, I like the down myself. I'm pretty careful with all my equipment too, though. Not to say that something can't happen, but I mean, I'm usually very careful, with my stuff. But so, I mean, I probably would go with down, but if I did not, the only other thing that I would go with would be the up insulation.
Yeah, we do love our Cedar Ridge Outdoors up.
Well, I've got Loco Libres also.
Oh, okay.
Which, I mean, it's funny because, it probably took me, because it was one of his prototypes. And God, I probably went a good couple of months before I realized that it was not down. I actually had to send George a message, and I asked him, and he started laughing at me. He's like, "No, that's the up material, the up insulation." I was like, "Okay."
Gotcha. Would you there's a lot of people that we talk about that pack their own fears, especially like on the hiking and things like that. So I ever wonder, I know you said that you're really careful with your gear, but do you pack any extras just in case something may fail, like an extra set of straps or anything along those lines?
I didn't whenever I done my first hike. I mean, I put a lot of trust in the material and stuff like that. Probably more than I should, but, also knowing, the vendors that I buy from and the quality equipment that they put out. I know that if I was on the trail and say something, got messed up and I had to replace it, I know I could reach out to them, get on the phone or whatever, reach out to them. And I know any one of them would, do what they could do to, get me the replacement as quick as possible.
Gotcha. So I've got a few little random questions about just not necessarily hammock related, but on your hike. Is there any food that you ate on the AT that you now can no longer stand?
I can't stand Pop-Tarts. I got tired of Pop-Tarts.
So what was your go-to flavor?
Usually
people want to know.
Usually strawberry, but I mean, I've done strawberry. I've done the s'mores. I've done the fudge. I've done cherry. What is the other one? The brown sugar cinnamon, or what is it? No, not brown sugar cinnamon. Apple brown sugar or something like that. I do believe.
Gotcha. Okay. On the flip side, so what was your favorite meal on the trail?
Well, let's see. It would have probably be one of my snacks. I would always buy a box of Ritz crackers, which had 4 sleeves, and I would buy 2 blocks of cheese. and those would be my snacks. But we always came up with our own meals out there. And so, I could take like a tortilla and throw some peanut butter in it and get some jelly packets and squeeze some jelly into it and get some cheese crackers and crumble them up and throw a Snickers bar on it and roll it up. And it was really good.
That sounds like an indigestion roll up, but
whatever works.
So you weren't awesome. Using like a lot of Mountain House and things like that?
No. Generally, it's funny because generally you want as many calories as you can get. And I mean, a lot of those freeze-dried meals, a lot of them don't have a whole lot of calories. The general rule is you look at the calories on the back of the product, and you look at the weight of the product, and you generally want about 100 calories per ounce of weight.
That's a lot of calories.
Yeah. But anything less than that, and because you're burning so many. So that's a rough average of what's worth the weight of carrying.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
So how many miles a day would you average?
I figured it up, and I averaged about somewhere between 15 to 18 miles a day.
So what was your longest day?
My longest day was 36 miles in the rain.
Whew.
It sucked.
That sounds pretty righteous. That sounds pretty righteous.
It sucked.
Okay. So let's see. So what was your worst day on the trail?
36 miles in the rain.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was just a bad day because I started off at one of the shelters and woke up and saw that it was cloudy. And so I waited for a little while to see what it was going to do, and it never done anything. And so I was looking at the guidebook, and next shelter up wasn't, too god awful far. It was something like 6 miles or something like that. So, I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go. And if it starts raining, I'll just get to that next shelter and stay there. Sound like a good plan. So I get to going, and probably about 2 miles after starting, it started to rain. So I'm in the rain, I'm hiking. I get to the turnoff of the shelter, take my right. The shelter's about a half mile down. So I hike the half miles down to the shelter just to see the top of the shelter is torn off because they are remodeling it. So I had to turn and go back the half mile back to the trail and then go to the next shelter. I get to the next shelter, which was, that next shelter was probably, 18 or so miles, something like that. It was up there, 16, 18. But, so I get there, still raining, and I had to go down a little side trail down the side of the mountain to get to the shelter. And when I turned to the front of the shelter, there was a scout group that probably had 50 kids with them, and all 50 kids were in the shelter. So there was no room. So back up the side trail to the trail again, and I had to get to the next shelter, which the next shelter was the 501 shelter. And so I'm thinking to myself, it's getting late. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't care how many people are in the shelter. I don't care if there's one bed and 5 people in it. Somebody's moving over. So I get there, and there was about 4 or 5 people there. But this was a fully enclosed shelter. They had a caretaker that, stayed next to it and all this. And anyhow, plenty of room. So I actually got dry, finally, late that night.
Mm-hmm. And where was this at?
That was the 501 shelter, which is there in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So what was your favorite state to hike through?
See, that's a hard one because I liked them all. Each one was different in its own way. I liked the southern states. I don't know. To me, a lot of the southern states were, in my opinion, better maintained. But the whites and stuff like that, you're above tree line. It's gorgeous up there. I loved New York. I loved hiking through New York. New York is a very beautiful state to hike through. So I mean, each one had its own pros and cons.
Gotcha. So, what was your favorite moment on the trail?
Favorite moment? God, there's so many. I mean, just, catching back up to trail family and hanging out with them. And I mean, I don't know. There's so many good memories and everything. Mighty Blue and I was actually talking about that, when we went up to that Woods Hole weekend.
Mm-hmm.
While we were hiking, we were talking about, the trail and everything else. Cause I mean, he's hiked it twice himself. And, like I was telling him, I can sit here and I can think of all the good times that I had, but it's hard to remember any of the bad.
Except for 36 miles hiking.
Yeah. It was 36 miles. It was miserable. Okay. But it still wasn't bad. It wasn't bad enough that, I started thinking, oh my God, why am I doing this crap? I just want to go home, it was, like I said, it was miserable, but nothing major.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's pretty good slew of questions and things like that. As an unexperienced hiker, I'm always very intrigued hearing a lot of these AT trails, mainly because the AT trail is the trail that I've always lived around and kind of the trail in our backyard as far as for the most part. I mean, we do have the Florida Trail, but it's not quite the same experience.
No, not at all.
But yeah,
there's less up and downs.
If anybody has any questions that they would specifically like to hear us ask, we can come back on with Paul or some of our other future guests that have done some long distance hiking. Just drop us a line in one of our social media outlets or send us an email, and we'll be happy to get some of your questions out and answered as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know here in the next couple of weeks, next week or so, I have another guy that thru-hiked it as well that I'm going to be interviewing. So
I'm trying to convince my father-in-law to hop on the podcast as well. He is not a thru-hiker, but he has section hiked about most of Georgia and a good section of Virginia on the trail, and he's done it all in a hammock as well.
Awesome.
I will say his experience has not been as smooth and seamless as yours has been, but it makes for some good stories.
Of course. There are always good stories when you're in a hammock.
Well, Paul, I really appreciate you allowing me to take over your show and interview you for a change. It was really, it's always fun to hear about your hiking adventures on the thru-hike. Like I said, it's something that I've always been very curious on. I don't know if it's something that I will ever take in one big swoop like you did, but some section hiking is definitely on my horizon, especially with, my wife. She's done some of the smaller sections. When we were up in Virginia, she did some of the Shenandoahs and
I loved the Shenandoahs.
Yeah, so in Georgia as well. And I know whenever we go hiking or whenever we go family camping, she's always looking for hikes to go on. And she drug me out on quite a few when we were in Colorado this past summer, and I'm sure that will only compound as further we get along. I do want to tell everybody to make sure that you check out our Facebook page and our website with Black Friday coming right around the corner. A lot of our cottage vendors are going to be doing some Black Friday sales. So if you want a really, really amazing piece of gear, and you don't mind waiting for it for a little bit and want to get a really good price, check our website and check some of those vendors for some of those sales that's coming up. I know Dutchware, he's running some different sales for the next couple weeks, which I'm sure.
Now this is the HangCon website.
Yes, this is the HangCon website.
Yep.
I know I'll probably be making an order here soon.
For
something that I definitely, absolutely do not need, but probably
another hammock.
Think I have to have.
Hammock number 57.
I don't think I'm that far yet.
Okay, 56.
That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I know better.
But yeah, so check out those vendors. I'm sure they would really appreciate you, and we really, really appreciate them as well. We could not do the things that we do without their support. Also,
Absolutely.
Our early raffle tickets are going on sale, and will go on sale till December 31st at midnight. So if you want to get an extra raffle ticket for the price of $6, 6 raffle tickets for $20, or they are going to be $5 each. You can get those through PayPal or Venmo or Cash App. The links are also located on our HangCon website. But again, as usual, Paul, it's wonderful to chat with you. We do it quite frequently, and I hope we continue to do it in the future.
Yep. You are going to be one of the permanent ones. So, I mean, there's been several that have already commented about you being the co-host. So yes, you are the co-host.
Hey, as long as people don't get tired of hearing my voice, it should be fine. Because
Does
Lord knows I can talk.
Does that count with me too?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just messing with you. All right, AJ. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on and flipping it around some, and we will holler at you later.
All right. Thank you much, Paul.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks again, Pheonix, for coming back on the show, even though it was a little weird having the roles reversed and me playing the part of the guest. I do have to say that you did a pretty good job, though. We will have to have you back on some alongside of me as a co-host as we interview some others about their hammocking adventures. Don't forget to check out all of the other podcast shows that are on the Hiking Radio Network as well. There is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the Jester Section Hiker podcast, the Trail Dames podcast, and Hiking Unfiltered. And if you like what we're doing here on the Hiking Radio Network and you want to see our shows continue, please consider supporting us with either a one-off or monthly donation. You will find the donate button on each of the Hiking Radio Network pages at hikingradionetwork.com. And don't forget to leave a review and share the show on your social media to help us grow. Until next week, happy hanging, everybody.